Well, the Canucks beat the Kraken. Again. But at least they still got eliminated from the playoffs anyway, and the Kraken do have a much better draft selection than the Canucks will, so take that, I guess. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Kraken lose to the Canucks 5-2 again. Now, granted, this time the Canucks actually came into the game with something to play for, unlike Seattle, who came into this game finally with 4 games left in full let's see what the young guys have mode. With the Kraken the day before calling up both goaltender Joey Daccord and defenseman Dennis Cholowski from the AHL, with the Checkers about to head to the playoffs. But for the Kraken, it's the last 4 games of the season, and with this being a back-to-back, Vancouver and then LA tomorrow, or today when you're watching this, a chance to get Joey one more look in the NHL before the Kraken season ends. Unfortunately for Daccord and the Kraken, this game, unlike their last few, does not get off to a good start in any shape, way, or form, as just a few minutes into the game, it's already 2-0 Canucks, who are fighting for their playoff lives at this point anyway. And for Daccord, while granted letting 2 goals in the first 4 minutes of the game is far from ideal, with these 2 goals, first it's Dries on a 2-on-1 breakaway, the one for the Kraken, by the way, being Dennis Cholowski, also fresh up with the team, playing his first game ever for the Kraken, though he did play a few games in the NHL earlier this season for the Capitals, when he got claimed off waivers from the Kraken, and then Seattle claimed him back off waivers a little while later. Anyway, Cholowski probably not the ideal one that you want to have in this scenario, even though I thought he had a pretty good game for Seattle. Either way, Dries decides not to pass it, instead going for the shot, which beats Daccord and gets into the back of the net to give the Canucks that early 1-0 lead. And then, less than a minute later, it's a good passing play from the Canucks as the Kraken defensively break down completely. Miller gets a clean shot off from the slot, and that goes in as well, once again beating Daccord. And just like that, it's 2-0, 3.5 minutes in. Both goals do go in on Daccord's glove side, so I don't know if there was some kind of scouting report that Vancouver somehow had on Daccord that they were going off of, or if it's just coincidence that both of these go under Daccord's glove into the back of the net. Actually, I think the Miller one went over his glove into the top corner, but either way, again, not a great start for Daccord, who has been fantastic at the AHL level for the Checkers, and those odd man chances were not going to stop throughout the rest of this first period, as Daccord was really put on an island a number of times by the Kraken. In fact, a couple of times, Seattle letting up just straight up breakaways that Daccord was actually able to stop. Still though, eventually the Canucks are able to make it a 3-0 lead late in the first. It's a power play goal that comes right at the end of a power play. The power play goal does come off a shot from the blue line, so again, another one that Daccord maybe would have had a chance to stop, but it does also look like it pinballs off a couple of guys on its way to the net, so probably a couple deflections there that made it a little tougher for him. Either way, Daccord, Kraken, nobody's having a good first period, aside from Vancouver. Of course, while Vancouver does get to that first intermission with the 3-goal lead, they also get to the first intermission with a 2-man deficit, as the Kraken get a late power play with less than a minute left, and that quick power play turns into a quick 2-man advantage, as a tripping call behind the net early in the power play gives the Kraken the 5-on-3 opportunity, which they aren't able to capitalize on late in the first, and then continue to fail to be able to capitalize on early in the second. And look, I know that at this point you don't need me to remind you how bad this Kraken power play has been and how much of a struggle it's had scoring goals over the course of this season, even with the late surge after Beniers showing up. Even with that being said though, and regardless of the fact that this 5-on-3 is interrupted by the intermission, with well over a minute of 5-on-3 opportunity, 2-man advantage, you should be able to score regardless of how bad your power play is, or how good the opposing penalty kill is. And in this case, while the Kraken penalty kill in and of itself has had some issues as well, even with their late surge lately, there are still 2 teams that have been worse on the penalty kill over the course of the season than the Kraken have, and one of them is the Canucks. Although the Kraken do waste that remaining 5-on-3 opportunity from the first period to start the second, they do at least maintain momentum coming out of it, and not long after they get another power play, and then just seconds into that power play, Beniers draws another tripping call to send the Kraken once again to another 2-man advantage for well over a minute. In fact, closer to 2 minutes. So Seattle once again with a 5-on-3 opportunity, and this time 5 forwards on the ice, somehow managed to promptly waste the first half of it entirely, not even hardly getting into the offensive zone, much less getting a shot off on net. Eventually, they're able to kind of pull it together, and like the first 5-on-3 opportunity, get a number of chances and shots off on net. But even though Martin doesn't have his stick for a lot of that second half of the 5-on-3, nothing gets past him, and the Kraken once again come up empty with the 2-man advantage. Though maybe I should clarify that the Kraken only completely waste this 5-on-3, technically speaking, as with the 5-on-3 coming to an end, Eberle gets a pass over a Vancouver stick to McCann, who's right in the middle of all 3 Canucks defenders, probably not ideally clustered right around McCann. Still, even with the triangle of Canucks around him, he's able to get a pass backhand out into open space to a wide open Beniers. Beniers does have a little bit of an awkward way that he gets this pass, so instead of taking the shot off with Martin looking right at him, instead he passes it right down next to the net where Eberle's gotten himself wide open, and Eberle shoots and buries the shot to give the Kraken their first goal of the game. A power play goal, though not a 5-on-3 power play goal, as it does come just after the 5-on-3 ends. I'll admit, as it was happening, I thought the Kraken were just finding another way to sloppily pass their way into another blown power play completely, but instead it turns out to be a beautiful passing play from Eberle to McCann to Beniers, back to Eberle and into the back of the net that gets the Kraken on the board, and also gets Beniers back onto the score sheet with his 6th NHL point in his 7th NHL game. Also for Eberle with the goal, this is his now 20th of the season, becoming the 3rd Kraken player with McCann and Gord before him to hit that 20-goal mark. Plus, while usually with the Kraken scoring just as that first penalty ended, them scoring would negate that second penalty and then they'd be off the power play back to 5-on-5. As this goal happens, sometime between when the goal happens and the faceoff is taken, Miller gets in trouble for some sort of unsportsmanlike behavior and ends up in the box, so the Kraken end up with a 2-minute power play coming out of this 5-on-3 opportunity that they score on at the end of. Unfortunately, this Kraken power play is really back to more of what we're used to from the Kraken power play, as they don't go much of anywhere with it. It just kind of fizzles out, I don't think even with a shot on goal, which could have something to do with the fact that it was the second power play unit out there for pretty much the entire time, largely because the first power play unit had spent most of the period to this point on the ice, starting the period with that 5-on-3, and then spent the entire second 5-on-3 on the ice with those 5 forwards out there. While we're on the subject though, fun kind of side note about the Kraken's second power play unit, they actually had Dennis Chalowski out there quarterbacking it as the lone defender, which I thought was kind of an interesting choice considering this was his first ever game with the team and first being called up from the AHL. Either way, I thought he actually did a pretty good job of it, even if it doesn't necessarily show on this particular power play, but he did a good job of keeping the puck in the zone whenever he had the opportunity to, and was doing a good job dishing it off to the guys on either side. Really nothing to complain about there, especially, again, considering this was his first game with the team. Coming out of this already 3rd power play of the period for the Kraken, 5 if you want to include the 2 that bled over from the first, and 6th power play of the game, with the Kraken having a power play earlier on in the first that also went pretty much nowhere. Either way, coming out of this power play, the Kraken are going to get a short window of 5-on-5, which with the way the rest of the second period went would turn out to be the most 5-on-5 we would see. And the Kraken take advantage of it. Again, even with that momentum killed off, they do get one push into the offensive end. It's that 4th line. And of all people, again, it's Sheahan coming off of one of his best games for the Kraken with a beautiful pass from behind the net out to a wide open Geekie next to the net, who from kind of a tight angle buries the shot in the top corner and gets the Kraken to within 1. It's now 3-2, still the Canucks with the lead, but the Kraken, after a miserable first period, have come back firing on all cylinders here in the second, even if their power play opportunities have left a little bit to be desired. For Morgan Geekie, this is his 7th goal of the season, a season which has seen far more opportunities that probably should have gone in than have actually ended up in the back of the net, and he did actually have a couple of other pretty good scoring opportunities in this game, doing his part to try to get the Kraken back into this game and hopefully come away with a win. Though, granted, if they had managed to win this game, it may have hurt their draft positioning coming up, but for Geekie, that could only help the Kraken's chances of them potentially picking up his brother in the first round, Connor Geekie, who at the moment projects to go somewhere between 4th and 8th in the draft. Now, we'll have plenty of time to get more into draft picks down the road once we get closer to the draft, and especially after the draft lottery has come and gone, so we actually know where the Kraken are picking. But, well, granted, if we're talking about just the Kraken getting the best available player, I do think there are a few picks better than Connor Geekie. It still would be pretty fun to see the Geekie brothers play for the Kraken, and it would make that whole Geekie squad thing feel even more like an actual squad. Getting back to the game though, at this point in the second period, about halfway through it, the Kraken, even with being aided pretty heavily by power plays, have been in full control of the second period and have made this comeback happen, with this game looking really like a flip-flop of their previous two. But the Kraken momentum is effectively cut off here, as the rest of the second period continues to be a mess, with the refs really keeping those whistles warm. First, it's Vancouver who gets a power play, though quick into that power play, once again it's Miller to the box to go to 4-on-4. Eventually that 4-on-4 comes to an end, and then Seattle ends up getting another power play, in the end getting 7 power plays in just this period alone, again counting those 2 that bled over from the first, and 8 total in this game. So when we get to the end of the first period with the score now 3-2, it is great that the Kraken have managed to score 2 goals to make a game of this after giving up 3 in the first, but it still does feel like they kind of left a lot on the table with 8 power plays, only 1 of which they end up scoring on, against again, the second worst penalty killing team in the NHL. So yeah, great to score 2 goals, but you probably would have liked to have more. Even though one of those power plays is just 10 seconds long after the 4-on-4, still a lot of opportunity that mostly ended up getting wasted. And then finally with the third period, while it is a game coming into it, it's a pretty back and forth start for really the first half of it, until eventually in the back half of the third, the Canucks do get another power play, and while the Kraken are able to kill it off, even with Vancouver getting a lot of time in the offensive zone, right as the power play comes to an end, a Canucks shot on goal is saved by Decord, but the rebound bounces up and over behind him. He doesn't know where the puck's gone. It's Shen that finds it first behind Decord and puts it into the net to make it a 4-2 game, which does make, with just a few minutes left, the comeback a little bit harder for the Kraken. And even with that, it was not meant to be, as at this point the Kraken pretty much revert to that team that we saw at the start of the game that starts letting up odd man rushes, free on Decord, it's a couple of breakaways, and then eventually it's another 2-on-1 opportunity, this time with Larson being the one, and a good pass across to Hughes, who ends up scoring to get us to that 5-2 score that we end up finishing the game with. As for takeaways from this game, I just have one big one, and that is the Kraken power play, or honestly, lack thereof. Again, just 1 for 8 on the night on the power play against the second worst penalty killing unit in the league, even with that improved first power play unit for the Kraken. And that of course isn't even to mention the 2 extended 5-on-3 opportunities that the Kraken got in this game. Yes, one of them was interrupted by an intermission, and the second one the Kraken scored immediately after, before the fourth guy could even get into the play. Still though, the Kraken didn't score twice at 5-on-3 with well over 3 minutes of chance with that 2-man advantage. And yes, I am well aware of the fact that at this point it's far too late to change anything drastically for the power play this season, and even if they were able to, it really wouldn't make that much of a difference over the last 3 games here. But they need to figure something out in the offseason that makes a drastic difference for next year. And if you're wondering how much the power play really matters, well, just in this season at the point we're at, the top 11 teams in power play conversion percentage are all in the playoffs. Meanwhile, the bottom 6 teams, which yes includes the Kraken, are also the bottom 6 teams in the standings, even though the order is slightly changed around. So I think that makes it pretty clear just how important a good power play is. And obviously, yeah, having a good power play is going to help your team win games, but that is a pretty drastic difference where, again, top 11 teams playoffs, bottom 6 teams, bottom 6 of standings. As for what the Kraken can do to fix the power play, well, I do think they're onto something with having Beniers, Eberle, and McCann as a group there. It seems like that has actually been scoring some goals, even if not quite to the pace that you need to see. So having some good goal scorers on that first unit definitely helps. Otherwise, being a little bit less stagnant and predictable would go a long way. The few times we have seen the Kraken put the puck in the back of the net, it usually comes off of quick passing plays and not that slow perimeter passing that they so often revert to. Those at least seem to be the most obvious things to me anyway. As for what else the Kraken could use to fix this power play by next season, I don't know, I'm not a special teams coach, they don't pay me for that. The only thing I get paid for, and I really don't get paid that much for it, is to complain about the power play on the internet. So yeah, if you guys have any ideas, feel free to let me know down in the comment section below. And finally, as for the Kraken 3 stars of the game, the first one I think is pretty obvious, and that's Morgan Geekie. A beautiful goal there for the second Kraken goal of the game. He also had a few other grade A scoring chances, really the only player for the Kraken that consistently produced offensively in all 3 periods, with a very good chance, the first actual chance for the Kraken on goal of the period in the first, which, while we're on the subject, that Geekie shot over 11 minutes into the first was the first one of the game for the Kraken. That's how bad that first period was. Otherwise, again, the goal in the second, another shot I think he had in the second, and a couple good chances in the third. All in all, a good night for Morgan Geekie. McCann's going to get the second star for me. I thought, at least as far as individual effort is concerned, he had the best game for the Kraken. I will say that that line with him, Gordon, Kuhlman probably had the least gelled and in sync game that I've seen them have since they became a line in the first place a couple weeks ago. I mean, neither Gord or Kuhlman had a particularly bad game. It was just that the three of them didn't really seem like they were as together as a line as we've seen them over their time together. Still though, even with that being the case, McCann, at least from time to time, was able to create some plays on his own, and he was also a big part of any of the chances the Kraken did get on the power plays, and including the one that actually got into the net. So he did spend a good amount of time on the ice on the power play as well. And the third star I again thought about giving to Riley Sheahan, who has had maybe his two best games for the Kraken in these last two, unfortunately, losses for Seattle. And I also thought about giving it to Joey Daccord. While he didn't necessarily have a great game for the Kraken, I thought about giving it to him anyway, just for putting up with the terrible defense in the first period and the back half of the third, coming off of being called up from a very good Charlotte Checkers team. But in the end, I'm going to end up giving that third star to the other Kraken goal scorer in Jordan Eberle, who again benefited from having a lot of time on the ice as part of that first power play unit, which is certainly also a big part of the reason that I thought he had the best second period of any of the Kraken. And while he wasn't necessarily super noticeable in either the first or third, well, nobody on the Kraken other than Geekie was particularly noticeable in either of those periods, so having a good second period was enough to get him that third star. Plus, again, becoming the third Kraken to hit 20 goals certainly helps. But with that, as always, I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. Even if I disagree with them, just try to keep it civil. Maybe your 3 stars of the game, and again, what you would do to fix this Kraken power play by next season. Otherwise, I guess I'll see you tomorrow, so if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below that help support the channel. And until next time, which again will be tomorrow, be good to each other, God bless, and go Kraken.